So, today we're going to do some spells in case you haven't guessed it yet. Okay, and it's an interesting way of doing spells, especially I think Dark Souls is kind of unique in this way. So, we're going to also utilize the way we have created our inventory in the past, and we'll see how we can expand it and also make a review of the tools we've made. And I'll show you some changes, but let's keep that for the past. First, before we do anything, I have to do a few fixes. If you like my notes over here, then I'll show you how you can create one of these. It's fairly simple. So if we're going to add scripts into our static functions, we forgot to add a few things when we were copying the actions, and that has to do with, let's see, okay, we need to also copy from one action to the another action. When we're doing deep copy action to action, you can do file references and see where this is called from. But basically we forgot to add two things: if we can parry and the actual input for this. So when we are copying one action to the other from our inventory, we also need these two stuff. And if in the future you want to add more stuff, then you can do this. Okay, we will have to add them in here as well. Let's close this for now. Let's see the notes, because I'm probably going to forget to mention it later. So this is nice because you can have, just a place to add a few notes right there in the inspector. So what I did in here, it's fairly simple. Text area, pass your values, and I think this has to do with the minimum lines and the maximum lines. Maximum lines, I think they don't, even if you have only a few of these, you can still keep pressing enter and it will expand. Okay, and just drop this in one of your game objects. This is just a new inspector tab. Add tab, inspector. Okay. Place it somewhere in your UI and then simply lock it. So this will always remain over here, and I can go and change my other, and I can, switch all my other objects and have the inspector, the normal inspector, in here as well. The only thing that is going to lose the reference and the lock is if I change scenes. Okay, but still it's an easy fix. Select this game object and then unlock and lock it again, and there you have it. And you can write notes and other stuff right there in the editor and keep them. Okay, enough for that. You had an assignment last week, and that was to create the objects and, well, to create a few items. In this case it was the round shield. Okay, it works for me. Hopefully you did it, but the purpose of this exercise was to get you acquainted with how you can create items. Okay, if I write round shield, I get a round shield. If I write round shield on both of my weapons, then I can have two shields, because why not? Left, we're blocking. The only problem right now is that we have a few issues with our animations on the right hand, because for some reason the mirroring of the body just gets screwed up, while on the left hand you can see it's kind of a little bit better. But if we do both together, as you can see, because we cannot have enough protection. Okay, so we have stuff like this. But yeah, as I said, the important thing with what I said with the assignment was to just get you acquainted in how you can create weapons easily. So onto the spells. I've created a few particles which we're going to use. Okay, and they have to do with, you'll find them of course in the resources folder if you haven't seen them already. They are fairly simple. I'm not going to go over how I've created this. These are really simple. It's mostly just shape and size over lifetime, and for the renderer, you know, just because it fits, I did it a mesh and a cube, and simply just put an emissive material. Again, you will find in the resources folder. So, okay, we have this. We'll use this as a fireball. We'll use this for, you know, spitting fire out of your hand, and a hill. If we have time to see this in this video, then we also do a hill. So before we see all of this though, all the cool stuff, let's close them. We're going to do it exactly the same as Dark Souls does it. So that means your spells, you have 3 categories, okay, and these 3 categories, to have one spell from each one of these, you need to also have a relative item that will enable you to use that magic. For example, you have pyromancy, you have miracles, and you have sorcery. Okay, let's start with pyromancy or pyromancy, whatever, however you call it. And yeah, let's start with that. So we need to create a new item that's going to be to serve as pyromancy flame. Okay, I've created mine. It's just the prefab for this is really just an empty cube with an emissive material, and just, you know, it has the cube, it has the, not this, let's drop it in here. It has a particle, it's rotated a little bit off this point, but doesn't matter, it's still the same. And a light. Okay, a light just so that you got some highlights upon your character, just for fancy. No shadows or anything. Okay, and you can also set this to non-important if it's an issue, performance is an issue. So until this point, it's just as the same as any other weapon. If we go now into our resources, weapon. Okay, as actions, I've only have one. At this point, it's just right button and the attack. Okay, everything is like this. And model prefab. So if I go and change on the controller, let's change this to pyromancy flame. And hit play. We have it in our hand, and of course, because we have the OH attack 1, it's just going to play the attack. Now let's go into our animator, select the boxman animator. You'll find these new animations again in the resources folder. Where you'll find the resource folder is of course in the description. On not interactions, we want on override. We have the interactions, and we have a throw animation. Well, you know, as with the quality of the previous ones. Yeah, oops, we don't want the shield. We want the throw animation. Okay, drop it in here, exactly as everything else, as we have with our override. Let's do make transition and leave it in here. So if we want to throw something, we'll use this. And this doesn't have to do only with spells. Okay, you have also grenades, you have, although I think knives and stuff like that can have their own animation, or you can have multiple of this. But yeah, at least for now, this will do just fine. So, the next thing we want is on our spells we have a few stuff. So for example, let's start with the fireball. Okay, we have something like this. The idea behind it is when this ends and we're getting into the fireball loop, this will count as your spellcasting time. Okay, and you can manipulate the timing with this because there are items that affect your casting time. And yeah, this will loop until you've reached over the the amount of spellcast you can do, usually just half a second or even less than half a second. Okay, and in here we're going to start a new particle that's going to be playing on the hand of the player in here, and then we're going to be playing the throw animation, which also we're going to create a projectile and stuff like that. We're going to, if we have time, we're going to create the rest of we're going to create a few more types of spells. Okay, you will see what this is a little bit more. For example, if you discount the jumping up and down, this will be for healing and stuff like that. Now, let's close this, and before we actually see all this cool stuff and use the animations, we need to create a few more instances for our inventory. So let's go into our scripts, not inventory, controller, inventory manager, and write down here item. We're going to create a new class, and this time it's going to be a spell. Let's start, of course, with serializable, public class, spell. Even if it's a spell, it's still an item, so it's going to derive from item, because we're going to be taking them from we're going to need an icon, an item name, and an item description just as well. And now we should have a way to know how each spell is going to be doing a few different stuff. And of course we need to separate what type of spell everything is. So let's write a public enum spell type. I'm going to do exactly what Dark Souls does. That will be pyromancy, I think it's miracles and sorcery. Okay, so public class, public spell type, spell type. We should also bring our action manager into the mix. Okay, we have spells, and then the spells are going to be looking for a spell type. So for example, in here, let's actually maybe we should bring the spell type into our action manager. And then we can say public spell type, spell type. If we don't add anything in here, or because the type might be attack, block, or something else like that, then we don't really care. Okay, it's just going to ignore this field. Okay, so we can just leave it like that. Let's go into our deep copy actions though, and because we're definitely going to forget if we don't do it now, we're going to say spell type equals wa dot spell type, and let's do also on deep copy action to action, a dot spell type will be wa dot spell type. Okay, so we're now passing spell types, which means into our inventory, or better yet into I think it was not actually state manager. We have it closed. Let's open the state manager. No. State manager, let's close this. We don't need this. We don't need this for now. Yeah, we don't need also this. I think runtime weapon. It's not the same as the runtime weapons. We won't need random spells, for example, because they're going to be the... Or, yeah, we actually might need runtime weapons, runtime spells. Let's see, because we're going to have weapon models and weapon hooks. Anyway, so let's go into our inventory manager again. Public spell type. Let's create public game object. This is going to be our projectile, or let's call this charge prefab or something like that. Okay, and actually this is a little bit I think it's better if we call this, instead of spell type, we're going to break it a little bit more. For example, let's call this spell class and public enum spell. Let's call this spell type, yeah, which can be a few things. Projectile, although we can set the projectile from the action input. I believe we have it somewhere. Yeah, we haven't yet. We just have it as spells. Okay, so let's do it like this. So it can be projectile, and then it can be a buff or debuff, you know. We're going to, well, actually I think, yeah, buff. The other one can be like the Death Knights or Dark Wraith shields. So let's find a uniform name for all of them that could be of the same, and let's call them looping because I cannot think of any other name to use. So let's call this, we need spell class, and let's ignore the spell type in our weapon, but let's include this note. Yeah, we're going to have them like this. So let's, on our action manager, let's not action manager, on our static functions, let's fix the error. Spell class, and then spell class. Okay, on our inventory now, we should create public game object. Let's call this, we have our spell type, we can have our projectile, public game object, pre-projectile prefab, the fire that goes on his hand or the lightning. And yeah, I think we could just use, let's call this hand prefab, because even if it doesn't have, even if it's not on his hand, this can still be, well, you know, we're going to reuse the same prefab even if it's a different spell type. And we can also add one more, I guess. Yeah, let's go with this too. Actually, let's call this particle prefab, so it can contain all of them, because yeah, I'm really not that good with naming. So okay, we have right hand weapons, left hand weapons. Now we need one more thing, which will be public list string, and it's going to be spell items. We're going to have regular items as well. And now we're going to create runtime spell items. So into our items, runtime weapon, create runtime spell items. Let's delete this. Let's create namespaces. And the same thing we're doing over here. We're going to say public spell, and we're going to use this as an instance, and then public game object current particle. And if we have to cast this as let's use only these two. I believe should be fine. We don't want any weapon hook in here because we're not really going to be doing anything with the weapons. We don't have any damage colliders and stuff like that. So yeah, let's go with this. So again, on our inventory manager, the same way we have runtime weapons, we're going to also have public runtime spell items, and we can say current spell. Now Dark Souls is pretty conservative in how many items you can have at runtime. Okay, for example, on the first Dark Souls you could only select either 2 weapons on the right hand or 2 weapons on the left hand. Okay, so that means you can have up to 4 weapons, like swords and stuff like that. And then you had your armor, where armor is entirely different. Items, usually with the items you don't have to, they are pretty standard on what they are. And after that you had your spells, which the spells I think you could only have depending on your attunement slots. Okay, so yeah, it's really conservative. So that means we can really have different instances like runtime weapon and runtime spell items, and just deleting them and creating new ones when we are equipping a new item. So it's a trade-off between a single frame where we're going to be losing a few, we're going to be using performance to delete our random stuff. Okay, and we're losing the performance because from the garbage collector and stuff like that, versus having all of them in memory. Obviously we can't just go with destroying. Okay, there is not even going to need to be pulled. So okay, so we have our current spell. Let's go now into, we actually need to create scriptable objects for all of this. So we have create inventory list. Let's just copy paste this, and we want to create scriptable object. I don't want this one. I'm going to say create spell items data list or whatever. Create spell items list scriptable object. We need to create the appropriate scriptable object again. And we're going to say spell item scriptable object. Open it up, delete this, namespaces, always make namespaces, and public list spell item or spell items, and this will take from scriptable object. Okay, save. Let's take the name, back to our scriptable object manager, create asset, spell item, scriptable object, save, close this, and we should do assets, inventory, create spell item, scriptable object, spell items, open this up, and we have the item name. Let's call this fireball. Item description, we're not utilizing it right now. Icons, you're going to find a few icons. Yeah, I made some. Use them. They are not something perfect, but anyway, they will do the job, at least for now. And I actually wanted to use icons, and we have our fireball in here. Add this one. It's a projectile, and for the projectile we don't have anything yet, but let's utilize the particle prefab, which is in our prefabs, not prefabs, into our particles, and the fireball hand small goes on the pyromancy flame, so the fireball hand normal will be over here. Okay, so now that we have this, let's go into our inventor manager again, and weapon to runtime weapon, we're going to have to use the same thing. For example, let's see, yeah, public runtime spell item, spell to runtime spell. I see we are passing a weapon. This time we're not going to be passing a weapon, we're going to be passing a spell. Let's call it S, and we don't care if it's left or right, it's still going to be the same thing. So game object, geo, new game object, and let's see, we have runtime spell item, rs will be geo.add component, or let's call this instance geo add component, and should be runtime spell items. And now we need to do a deep copy of spells, and we're going to be returning the instance. But first we need to do instance equals new spell, create a spell, and we don't need anything from over here. Okay, since it's not a weapon, it's something more abstract. So let's go on to our static functions and create a deep copy spell instead of just a deep copy weapon. Close all this. Public static void deep copy spell. Spell from spell to. So from from to dot item name, from dot item name to dot item description equals from dot item description to dot particle prefab, from dot particle prefab. Actually, it's probably better if we split this into half, so we know that we need the item names, and we also need this. We have item name, item description, to dot icon, from dot icon, and then to dot spell type, particle prefab, we have it, so we only need projectile for now, from dot projectile. Okay, let's put this back up here. deep copy spell, take this into a spell to runtime. So what we need to do is basically say static functions deep copy spell. From is going to be the spell we are already passing, and where to we need instance. It's going to help if we also, on the names, we can also change the names, although it's not really that necessary. S.item name, not description. Let's do also the same in here for our weapons. This is only for the editor, for the game object actually. Geo.name equals w.item name. Let's also change this geo. So spell to runtime spell. When we initialize again, here we initialize our weapons and all of this. Oops. And here we should be doing if spell items dot count is greater than 0, then current spell will be weapon to spell to spell item to runtime spell. We don't have the spell yet, and on our resource manager we also don't have a way to store this. So let's comment this thing out and let's go into our resource manager, and we're going to basically do the same thing as over here. We have all our weapon IDs, as you can see. So yeah, we can play this, we can do this two ways. We can either use weapon ID separate. Yeah, let's go with separate. I think it's going to be more clear for you at least. Okay, we have, instead of being so generic, let's use get weapon ID, get weapon ID, get weapon, load weapon IDs, load again weapon IDs, and we need void load spell IDs, and instead of using now the weapon scriptable object, let's create another dictionary, string integer spell IDs, and in here we should do spell item scriptable object. Let's go with obj resources dot load. It's case sensitive, so we need spell. Yeah, I forgot the name. Spell item scriptable object. Let's copy paste all of this. Okay, so we have our scriptable object, and we need to cast it as well as spell item scriptable object. We should play this safe, to be honest. If obj equals null return, you can write in here, you can throw the debug log. Okay, just so that you know in case there is errors. So the same deal with this, spell items, but instead use okay. And now for each, not for each, you know what I mean, object dot spell items dot count. And we're going to do pretty much the same thing. Spell IDs dot contains key object dot spell items I dot item name. Because we're using items and item names, stuff like that, yeah, we could have gone with a single list, but I think it doesn't really make a difference. It's not that we're going to have a lot of categories anyway, and it's not that at this scale is going to do any any difference. Item is a duplicate. We should also probably pass the item name over here just to be safe, or just to be more clear, not safe. It's not going to be anything, but instead of searching for inside the whole list to find which one it is, I guess better to be safe than sorry. So spell IDs dot add object dot spell items I dot item name and the I. Okay, so this will load the spell IDs. With that in mind, we need get weapon, well, not get weapon ID, we need get spell ID from string and then get spell. So public integer, yeah, there's no need for public integer, get spell ID. Let's go from string, let's be a little bit more clear, string and ID. So in integer index will start as -1, and if spells ID dot try get value ID out index, then return the index. Otherwise return, I think -1, yeah, return -1. Actually, you can't just use return index as this, since it's already -1. It shouldn't make any difference at all. Public spell get spell string ID spell scriptable object resources dot load SA dot, I think this, the name was a little bit not weapon scriptable, we want this. As scriptable as this, and then we want integer index equals get spell ID from string, pass the ID, and if index equals -1, return null. We're doing returns, but in theory you should never let this play with an error, okay, because you're just going into unknown territory over there. And then we should do object dot spell items index. And if you want to be entirely safe, you should also add here object equals null. But yeah, these are errors you'll have to fix before before doing a build, okay, because that means you cannot load your database, so that means you have problems. Can be loaded. Let's do the same for return null. Let's do the same for the get weapon, and let's just change that anyway. But yeah, these are game breaking errors, so as I said, if you ever get this debug log, come and see why you get the error, and you definitely need to fix it. So we have our weapon, and we have our spells. Let's go back again into our inventory inventory manager, and current spell will be spell to runtime spell. We need our actual spell, so that will be resource manager dot singleton dot get spell. We need to pass a list, not a list, our ID, which of course is going to be the first entry into our list. So that will be spell items 0. If we don't have anything, then it's not even going to come in here. Get spell, and I think we don't have anything else. Yeah, let's see what the true for this stands for. Oh, if it's the left weapon or right hand weapon. Okay, we don't care about any of this. We have our current spell. So now we also need an equipped, the appropriate equipped for our spell, which just means that on our public void equip spell, pass the spell runtime spell item spell, and for right now let's just do UI dot quick slot UI slot equals, let's just do this. So we have the update slot, but update slot, I think it's only going to return us get slot type. Let's see the slot types. Yeah, we have the spell, so if we do update slot, we need to only pass the slot type and the sprite. So in inventory manager, we only need UI slot dot update slot type dot spell, and we need the icon, which of course sits on spell dot instance dot icon. Let's throw this also into our initialization. Init spell item counts, and we can say here if current spell is not equals null, equip spell, and of course that will be current spell. Save. We have an icon, so that means if we clear this and hit play, I think we didn't we didn't add on our controller inventory manager. Let's close this. We didn't add the spell item, so let's call this, we need to have the same name, fireball controller fireball. Hit play. Okay, so we now have the item, well, the fire item or the spell item over there, and it's going to change exactly the same as the rest of the stuff. So yeah, let's do a few more stuff with this before we end, but I think we're going to see the spell behaviors on the next video, because we are way over. We're going to be way over an hour in a bit. So let's say we have more than one. Let's say we have right hand weapon, we have Paramus Flame, and we also want the sword. Keep in mind, names are case sensitive. Okay, so what we need to do over here, we want to change weapons. To do this, and we need to go into our input handler. Now this part of the video I've already added it, and I've lost, well, it was a few videos ago, and I'd lost the recordings, so those are gone. So I'm not going to write it, I'm just going to go over it. But first, before we write any script, we're going to go into our input, into our axis, and we're going to add two things, pad X and pad Y. This is going to be your controller, you know, the keys on your controller, the up and down keys. I think they're called pad or something like that. Anyway, the arrow keys on your controller, pad X and pad Y. For the keyboard, we can just hardcode it, and I have hardcoded them into 1 to 4. Okay, the setup for this, it's what you see. It's basically 6th axis and 7th axis for the Y, and for the X, 6th axis. Now, on to our input handler now. We have, because we are using axes into our controller, we need these two, the Y and the X, and basically for the keys. So, on get input, right down here, we have our two axes first, we're getting this, and if it's up, you're either pressing the 1 key, the number 1 key, not on the number, not on the numpad, but on your keyboard, you know, on top of the alpha 1 is on top of your WASD. And if in case the axis of the DX is higher than 0, then that means you are also pressing the up button. For the down, it's going to be the similar. Okay, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So what this will do is basically going to change you the left or right hand weapon, and it's also going to change either the items or your spells. Okay, so basically this is only what's happening. So on, yeah, I think that's about it. I've covered that. So we're going to be recreating this in a bit. Let's go into our inventory manager though. And basically we're going to be changing the runtime weapon and the left hand weapon. Now, we can't just have a whole references of this. For example, we could do, and let's try it with this list, runtime weapon, and let's call this R hand. R, which stands for runtime, for right, and weapons. So that means runtime, right, weapons. Public list, runtime weapon, runtime, left, weapons. Weapon to runtime weapon. Since this creates the actual instance, we can say, we know if it's left or right, so we can say if is left, then r.l.weapons.add, and we just need the instance. Else r.weapons.add instance. So this will add them into the list. Then actually we don't even need to have them public. So let's delete those. Let's create an instance. Let's create integer r index, public integer, l index, public integer spell index, and later we're going to add item index. So instead of just getting the first one, right hand weapons, we should be getting, instead of basically using the resources manager, yeah, this needs to be written a little bit cleaner at this point. So let's write that. So not for each right-hand weapons count, we're going to say weapon to runtime weapon. We don't need to cast it somewhere, we just need to do this. Okay, if this returns null, it might return a little bit more, yeah, it might have, the garbage collector might have a few more stuff to clean up later, but it doesn't matter, it only runs on init. Actually, we should encapsulate this much further, I believe. Yeah, let's do that. Let's encapsulate all this into their own function, which we're going to be using public void load inventory. So whenever we're closing and opening the inventory in the future, we're going to be simply calling this function instead of the init. So we need all of this. The parry collider, yeah, we don't really need the parry collider, so let's just take all of this, cut, paste in here, and we assign the states, we load the inventory, and then do the rest. We don't have to worry about this anymore, any other time other than start. So again, back here we want resource manager, get weapon, right-hand weapon, okay, and it's not the left hand, so we delete this. We're going to do the same for the left hand weapons, and again let's copy paste all this and change this to I. And yeah, I guess we can say although this most probably is redundant, but let's leave it and we'll see. So, okay, we have our two weapons assigned. Now we need to assign the right hand and the left hand weapon. So that will be, yeah, let's do this instead of doing this in here. Let's do this in here. So this will give you, will populate you these two lists. So that means if we do if weapon, not weapon, if r weapons dot count is greater than 0, then the right hand weapon will be your r weapons dot not dot r index, which means the first frame is going to be 0. But if in the future when we're saving a loading, if we also save the right hand index and the left hand index, okay, the next time we load, we of course want to have the proper weapon. So we should probably be doing also if r index is greater than r weapons dot count equals -1, then our index reset this to 0. So if the player is also changing weapons, it always going to revert back to the first one you have selected. Let's copy paste all this, and whenever you see that I copy paste it like this, for that they are doing almost the same thing, we could encapsulate it a bit further. But yeah, as you can see, just for 4 of this, so it might not even be that much necessary. But feel free to do that. And we want our left, so that means L index, left hand weapon, R L weapons, and left index. Okay, so this essentially does the same thing as we were doing before. If we close this, init all damage collider states, this will be passing states. We still need to init all of this just in case the new weapons we have, still have colliders. Let's see if this is going to play normally. It should. Shouldn't have any problems. But we do. Let's see why. And our weapons. I think if that's the case, that means we forgot to install to initialize this. Save. Okay, it works now, but the problem is that we have, even on the weapons we are not using, we still have enabled our weapons. So let's go into equip weapon, and we're basically just going to remove this. Not on the equip weapon, actually, we want on the instantiate, on this. We create a game object, we have all of this, and the final thing we do before we return, we're going to say set active false, and this will take care of that. And no, it didn't. Let's see why though. Let's see, no. No, this is, oh yeah, we need the weapon model actually, not the game object. The game object, it just holds references, so it's not really necessary to be closed. So if we do this, after we have taken the weapon hook, so let's do it in the end, just to be sure. Hit play. And okay, this opens and only opens the active weapon, so I have my pyromancy flame over here. So let's make it so we can change these weapons now. There is no back and forth because you only have 4 weapons. Okay, there's no change to the next weapon and the previous weapon, so that means we can just encapsulate it into a single function. And since we have 2 lists for our weapons as list, let's go and do public runtime, not public void, change to next weapon, and let's only pass is left, so that we know if we want to change on the left or the right hand weapon. If is left, then L index. Actually, we should be doing if L index is lower than the r.l weapons.count -1, then L index plus, else L index will be 0. Oops. So we need an unequipped weapon and an equipped again. So let's see what we are doing when we are equipped in a weapon. We only pass the instance and everything else is handled automatically, as you can see. So this, I believe this simplifies a lot of things. For example, let's do public void unequip, or yeah, actually before we don't even have to do that. If we come in here and say if right hand weapon not equals null. Well, actually we should do if is left, else in here if right hand weapon not equals null. In theory, right hand weapon and left hand weapon should never be null because we already assigned them, but all it's going to do is going to close the weapon model and then it's going to reopen it again, so you know there's no harm to that. Left hand weapon dot instance dot weapon model, no, left hand weapon dot weapon model dot set active false, and then right hand weapon model set active false. So that means if we say equip weapon in here, we're going to say equip weapon L index, not L index. The weapon we want to equip is RL weapons, L index, come on, L index, and is left is true. Okay, pretty simple. Else we're going to do the same, but for the R index lower than r weapons count -1, R index ++, else R index will be 0, and then we can say equip weapon r weapons L R index will be true. This can stay false. Okay, let's remove the brackets. I believe we're not going to need them anymore, just to make this script a little bit more compact. Well, actually we can write all this into a single line, but it might be confusing. Anyway, okay, so change to next weapon. That will mean, and let's do it on our input handler. Let's try just leaving it on our input handler. So down here, after we have done everything, let's say if d pad, let's go with d left. If this is true, then you can say states dot inventory manager dot change to next weapon, and is left true. If d right, states dot inventory manager dot change to next weapon false. Okay, this will work for, I think, yeah, maybe we should just add it on the state. I think this will work just fine, but there's going to be a slight little problem. That means if you are keep pressing the, let's see, yeah, it's kind of, it's a little bit weird. I actually don't know which weapon it is. Yeah, as you can see, it works. But we have some references left that we need to take care. Let's see for the controller if it works. The controller, I think, for some, yeah, it plays with up and down. And if I keep pressing it down, you can see that it's a little bit annoying. So we should probably make it a little bit cleaner. Let's see why it doesn't change though. Not why it doesn't change, it changes, but it doesn't removes the previous one. Weapon model, set active, false, right hand weapon. Oh, yeah. Because the right hand weapon, I believe this might actually never be assigned again. So, right hand weapon will be this weapon, and left hand weapon will be this weapon. Okay, because as I can see over here, there's no assignment, so that means that's probably the case. And yeah, it works just fine. Let's see if we can do this cleaner for the controller as well. And I think we are playing this, or yeah, the interactions. So if the interactions leave from this, yeah, this might require a little bit more code into our state manager, but it's going to or better yet, let's see what we can say in here. Maybe we can do it like this. So let's delete this, since these are wrong anyway. Oops. And we can say if dy is greater than 0. Let's also store the previous yeah, let's store the previous ones and be done with it, because there's no real point. We're going to say pd up, standing for previous the up, pull pd down, bool pd left, bool pd right. And let's go down here. After we have run all of this, we're going to say pd down will be d down, or actually, yeah, let's say if d down is false, pd down will be false again. If not d up, this might not be the best way to do this, but it's the only way I can think right now. So, you know, we might revisit this in the future. So yeah, when I'm writing code, most of the time I mostly care to just make it work, you know, in whatever way possible. Don't necessarily care if it's the most correct way to do this at first, but if there is problems, then we can always refactor and refactor. Okay, that is our job, so our job never ends. So the left in here and in here and in here, and we can say if not pd left, oops, then pd left will be true. For the keyboard, you might not notice any difference for this, just keep that in mind. pd right, because the keyboard only works on get key up, so that means you have to leave, you have to stop pressing the key, so this will only be for your controller, or more correct, will work correctly for your controller. Okay, the left, the right, let's also add the controller, which will be done. And I changed my mind, let's use this as well. So this will be dx, oops, or dx is lower than 0 or dx is greater than 0, and over here we can say or dy is greater than 0, and you'll be shocked to know that this will be dy minus than 0. Yeah, I know, surprising. Okay, so let's try this again, and if this works we'll do the spells, and we're going to stop the video. And it works like a charm, and if I keep pressing it I need to leave the button, so I'll have to tap it to change weapons. For the other stuff, of course, we cannot change because we only have one weapon and we don't have an arm. We can make an arm though. We'll make an arm in the future. So let's create another spell, and you'll have some more homework to create your own spells. Fireball. Let's call the next one Fire Breath or whatever. Let's change the icon. Let's call this looping for whatever reason, and let's use this particle. Okay, it doesn't matter, we still don't have really anything in here. So let's change on our controller. Let's change we want to. Let's change sword, small s, spell items, fireball to fire breath. Let's hit play. And we forgot to add different spells, but anyway, you can see that we changed items just like in that game, and we also can change to two-handed. Okay, beautiful. Let's add the final one. Let's add a way to be able to change spells. So on our inventory manager, which will be in here, and it is, we can also create equipped spell, not equipped. We have the equipped spell, so we all need change to next weapon, change to next spell. So public void, change to next spell. There's no need for left or right. Only thing we need to do is say if s index, not s byte, s index is lower than s. I totally forgot what it is. Oh, we actually we're not saving the current spell, so we also need to save this. We say runtime spell r spells. Let's initialize. Let's go and write this r spells dot count -1, s index will be ++, otherwise it's going to be s index equals 0, and then we're going to say equip spell r spells and s index. So on equip spell we're going to go in here, and we should also do current spell equals spell. Okay, this will, since there's no other reference anywhere and we're only changing the icon, this will probably work just fine. But before we do that, on load inventory we have all these lists. I'm not quite fond that we're doing it this way, to be honest. I think it's probably best if we encapsulate all of this. Anyway, let's go with the rest. we're going to do for spell items dot count spell to runtime spell resources manager singleton get spell spell items, and we want the eye. Okay, no need for this. And current spell is going to be null either way, since we're not assigning it. And we can just say if yeah, we should do in here, down here we should do our spells dot add instance. So our spells, let's go up here, our spells dot count, if it's greater than 0, then assign your first spell. Afterwards, this works just fine, so let's take all this into our input handler again. Down here, let's write here, and we're going to write the app. If not pd app, pd app true states dot inventory manager dot change to next spell. Let's take all of this though and write them in here and say void handle inventory slots or handle quick slot changes. Take all this, roll X, roll V, and drop this one here. If it doesn't fit here and you want to place it anywhere else, then you can also do it. There's no problem to that. Let's see the final one, if this is going to play. Hopefully it does. If not, let's see what we forgot. Update slot, Q slot. So I think we forgot on our UI to add hope you got that reference. UI manager. Now we have our spells. So in here, the only thing that can be empty, it's probably the spell.instance. Let's say debug.log spell.instance. So it's the spell that is. So that means we forgot to, oh yeah, it's not a current spell, we don't have a current spell. So this will be our spells 0. Actually, yeah, we should do it like this. So we're going to say if s index is greater than our spells.count -1, s index will be 0, and instead of 0 in here, pass s index, and this will work just fine. Let's delete, yeah, we have deleted the debug log. Let's try again, and it works like a charm. Yeah, the icon needs a bit of love, but yeah, this is exactly how it works on Dark Souls as well. Okay, so yeah, I hope you can see how cool is this, because so as I can see, we forgot to add one more thing. Even if I change weapons, the action manager has kept the items, well, the actions from the previous, from my previous weapon. So let's fix that as well. Action manager, equip weapon, update actions on one-handed. Let's see what should we do. Actually, we could just, call this every time we change the weapon. Every time we change something, and it's just going to override them. We're not going to worry about that. Which in turn, we should probably also change the behavior when we are changing the... yeah, that's going to happen. So, on state manager, was it on state manager? No, it was on inventory manager, I believe. Change to next weapon. Down here, let's go and say states.action manager.update actions 100. Okay, if you're changing your weapons, you're probably changing from 100 to 200, which also leads us into creating a few more states into our input handler. For example, we cannot change quick slots when we are rolling, when we are basically doing something else. So that means in our state manager we have a flag, which means if we are in action. Let's see if this is true. Or maybe not the in action, maybe the can move should be the proper way. Let's see. It's also public. So if states.canMove is false, then return. If states dot here's a thinker. Can you change weapons when you are when you are two-handing? Can you change weapons? Yeah, on the right hand I presume you can change, or on the left hand at least you can change. So I have to check for that. I don't really remember what it is. So until I check, I'm just going to press, I'm just going to put it states two-handed. If it's two-handed, then I'm just going to return. So that means to change a weapon, you're going to have to go outside of the... let's leave it this here, but we still want to change spells, even if we cannot use them. Okay, let's leave it this here. And we should probably take this as well in here and put this up here. So spells and items, you can probably change them. They shouldn't be really a problem on your quick slots, changing them even if you are doing something, or even if you're having them as two-handed or not. And for... actually, yeah, let's take this one as well. Okay, so the spells can change. In the future we're also going to change the items, the consumable items. And yeah, for this two, it should be it should stay the same. This will be correct. Let's take also this, cut this, change this over here. Save, let's see. So what we did, if I'm attacking now, I cannot change the weapon, but the moment I go out of attack, I'm going to change the weapon. Okay. And it works like a charm. and we can change weapons, we can change spells, even though we don't really have, well, actually the spells, because they are handled by the item we have on the right hand, for example the pyromancy, okay, they are not really making that much of difference. The spells, like, yeah, it's only the behavior that changes. So yeah, one more thing before we end, don't worry about this, it's just to know that there's no action to copy. And yeah, one more thing before we finish. On the previous video we had, where we were doing the XML stuff, we were saving them. I did a lot of changes to that, and for example on my XML maker and item to XML, I've turned this into a static class and I'm calling it from the menu item in here. You'll find the script in the resources folder, okay, because yeah, it's not really worth going through all over this again, and we should probably be changing this. And actually, yeah, it might not make sense if I let this in the resources folder, because we're still going to have to be updating this. So yeah, I'm just going to put it there, but for any updates, yeah, I might not bother with that. So all this does is basically just going to give you an XML from weapon items. It's getting the scriptable object if it can find it, and it's going to create you the XML, and it's just going to, yeah, instead of adding them in a list, whatever you have on your scriptable object is going to turn that into an XML. Okay, so I've added a few more stuff to help. It's basically breaking up a vector to an XML nodes and saving them one by one, as you can see. Everything else just stays the same. Actually, it's to string. And when we are reading this, XML to resources is going to basically go and find the scriptable object, and then it loads from the XML and adds them inside the scriptable object. Let's try test this. I'm going to go first into my resources. I'm going to duplicate my weapon scriptable object, and I'm going to write this as backup. And on my first one, I'm going to make the size as 0. Okay, I'm cleaning the entries. So I have already, yeah, I should probably first do the XML first. So assets, inventory, we have this, we don't need this, backups, make weapon database backup. Okay, weapon database XML created into streaming assets, items, weapons, the items database, we don't need it, it's the old one. The weapon database, it's the new one we are using now. Okay, and it has every weapon we have added. For example, we have the sword. Let's see, pyromancy flame, or pyromancy, or whatever. Okay, the weapons database is this. If we go now and clear a list in here and go assets, inventory, backup, read weapons database from XML, and we have a problem for some reason. I think it has to do with the version, to be honest. Let's see. File path, weapons database XML. It might not be that name. Yeah, I believe it has to do with the version in here. But let's do a quick Google search. So this is directly from the MSDN. Okay, I'm doing a copy paste, oops, in our XML, copy paste. If you can tell the difference, then tell me also. It might be the spaces, although, yeah, it could be the spaces. I don't really know. This still feels like it gives an error. That's going to give an error. Let's close this and let's open it again. And it has to do because we are writing this, I believe. Anyway, there's somewhere a bug. So for some reason it cannot load the scriptable object. I need to check from that. Read weapon database, text node. Line 2, position 1. Anyway, I'm going to see what it is, and when I upload the project, it's going to be, when I upload the script, it's going to be fixed. So yeah, but what that's going to do is basically just going to populate the weapons list, but it's not going to have your icons and stuff like that, and you have to reassign the prefabs and the icons. Okay, so I'm going to end the video here. I'm not going to use the XML stuff, it's just for backup. Okay, just in case you might need it, especially if you have a lot of stuff in your inventory, do a backup. Okay, because you're going to lose all that work, obviously. And yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, we've created our base for our weapons. We created a few spells and different types of items and stuff like that. So on the next one, we're actually going to get to use our spells, and it's going to be really nice. So you know what to do. Like, subscribe if you like to see more, and if you like for me to keep continuing and be able to continue making all of this, then you can support me on Patreon, where you also get additional rewards depending on your Blitz tier. Okay, and you know, everything just goes back into keep making a lot more of this. The other way you can support me, of course, is through Gumroad by buying a project or 2 or 3 or 4, you know, as much as your heart desires. Actually, I think we might have, oh no, yeah, it works. It's just this one that doesn't work properly. And yeah, so as I said, I'll see you next time.